So now let's talk about what kind of different skills you can use in your rotation. All right. First type of skill we have is a buff. A buff is something that's going to boost or protect you. It's going to make your ability to survive greater. It's going to give you a shield. And some examples of that, for example, would be something like critical surge for a sorcerer, right? Critical surge, when you activate this skill, right, for 33 seconds, you get increased weapon and spell damage by 20%. You get major brutality and major sorcery, all right? You also get the ability that any critical damage you do heals you for 3,366 health, and that effect can occur once every second, hence global cooldown. So this is a buff. When I activate this, I'm not hurting the enemy. I'm not doing anything to cause damage. I'm doing something to increase my damage, and that's a buff. Okay. It could also be a shield, right? So if I go to class here and I go to Daedric Summon, a Conjured Ward, right? This is a shield. When I activate this, for 6 seconds, I get a shield that absorbs 4,287 damage over 6 seconds, right? And the damage shield is capped at 50% of your max health, right? So this is a buff, whether it be a shield, whether it be something that increases your damage, um, anything like that that's going to be increasing, spell critical or increased penetration or empowers a shield, like I said, or blade cloak for certain weapons classes, dual wield. You have deadly cloak here. These are all buffs, okay? The second type of skill is a debuff, and that weakens the enemy, right? That could be a snare or a stun. Maybe it immobilizes them, right? So if you look at Bombard here, you fire a burst of arrows in one shot, dealing 5,226 damage. So it does. This is also an attack, but enemies afflicted are immobilized and have their movement speed reduced by 40%. Okay. Another example would be, for example, under Destruction Staff, you have weakness to elements. Weakness to elements is going to cause major breach for 17 seconds, reducing physical and spell resistance, right? So it makes the enemy weaker. These are debuffs, right? When I use Streak, yes, Streak does damage, it does 4,000 damage, but the reason I use Streak is because it stuns everybody it's an unblockable stun for 3 seconds on anybody in the path of that streak, right? And it's the stun that I'm after. That's the debuff, okay? So debuffs there to weaken the enemy, and of course we had buffs to boost your skills, increase your damage, or you want to decrease the damage of the enemy, and that's going to be a debuff, okay? Third type is going to be instant damage or heal. These are your classic just damaging abilities, right? So when you cast an ability such as Wrecking Blow, right? This just does damage to the enemy, right? A lot of these overlap. Actually, Wrecking Blow does grant you Empower for 3 seconds, which increases your damage to light and heavy attacks. So this is a buff and it's an attack, right? But standard attacks, a light attack, a heavy attack, these are just damages, and they're either gonna, it's an instant, it's an instant ability that will damage or heal you, right? So I can use Resolving Vigor and get a heal if I want, right? And that's going to be something I use and activate instantly. Up, I'm low on health, heal. Up, I need to do damage, light attack, heavy attack, Wrecking Blow, Critical Rush. It's also a gap closer, and we'll go from there. Okay, so those are instant. So some type of skills do damage instantly one time, and what you get is what you get. Other types of skills do damage over time. These are called dots, damage over time. Okay. There's also hots, which are heals over time, right? So what happens is I cast one time and then the skill keeps doing damage. So a good example of that on the bow skill line, poison injection. Okay. You shoot an arrow coated in Bandari poison at an enemy, dealing 3,999 poison in an instant, but then it does 7,995 poison damage over 10 seconds. And of course, all these numbers are manipulated by the other skills, other buffs, your champion points, how they're allocated, different types of sets you can wear. So don't worry about the numbers per se. The point though is that it does another 8,000 or so damage over 10 seconds. So once I hit somebody with poison injection, even if I stop attacking, I'm going to do another 8,000 damage over 10 seconds, right? And this specific brings us into the next type, which is an execute skill. This does 100% more damage to enemies under 50% health. So an execute is something you use at the end of a fight near once a boss is lowered a certain amount of health. This in this example with poison injection, it's 50%, right? With executioner, it's under 50%. With the Nightblade skill, I think it's Killer's Blade, it's 25%. So it could be, less than 50%, it could be 25%, but basically it does more damage when the boss has less health. So this does Executioner does 400% more damage to enemies with less than 50% health, which is a massive increase to damage. So you don't want to spam this early in the fight, but you do want to use this at the end of the fight to do a tremendous amount of damage. Okay, so that's an execute. And then finally, you have an area of an effect attack. And an area of effect attack is going to be something that once cast, anything in that certain area is going to take damage, right? So endless hail or arrow barrage, you launch a multitude of arrows into the sky, they rain down, dealing 1271 physical damage to enemies in target area every 1 second for 12 seconds. So this is a damage over time, and it's an area of effect. And it says that here the radius is 5 meters, the duration is 14 seconds. Okay, and this is a ground effect. Okay, something like Hurricane, right? This has a 5-meter radius. This just follows you around. When you cast Hurricane for 15 seconds, basically got this hurricane swirling around you, and anything within a 5-meter radius of you is getting attacked by that. It's going to get damaged by that. Okay. I know one of the most popular area of effect is going to be under the destruction staff, Wall of Elements. And Wall of Elements, same thing. Slam your staff down, create an elemental barrier in front of you, dealing 588 magic damage to enemies in the target area every 1 second. And that is an area that's 18 by 8 meters, lasts for 10 seconds in front of you. And so when you cast these, basically you can do a lot of damage to a lot of enemies because it's hitting anything that's in that area of effect. So those are some of the types of skills you can use in your rotation, and having a good rotation is about using those skills effectively. Typically, what you want to do is before you get into a fight, you want to buff yourself up, right? Increase your damage, make yourself as strong as possible. You want to debuff the enemy to make the enemy as weak as possible, right? Or stun them or snare them so they can't move, or silence them so they can't cast spells, things like that. Then you want to start doing your damage. You ideally want to start with those damage over times so that way they're doing work for you, right? You hit the damage over time, it's doing work for you. Then you activate your instant abilities. At that point, it's whether or not you need to reactivate a buff, reactivate a debuff, or reactivate a damage over time. And in between those, you're going to be using your active abilities, whether it be light attack, your instant attacks like light attacks, heavy attacks, to regain resources, or your instant cast skills. And that's going to be what's happening in rotation. I'm going to give an example of that here next.